First of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to represent the Academic and Research Libraries Network at the 2021 EU Learning and Teaching Forum for SPARC Europe. I am Cécile Swiatek, Secretary General at ABDU, the French National Academic Libraries Association, and a French member at the working group called the European Networks of Open Education Librarians, ENOL, at SPARC Europe. The session abstract states that considerable challenges associated with the digital world have been highlighted, but many benefits too. And indeed, people have been struggling with COVID-19. Many of them have been accessing the infrastructures for the first time. The current digital transformation is one of today. Main challenges in teaching and learning, accessing the infrastructures, teaching, training in a virtual world, sharing material digitally appeared to be for some a real challenge. Teaching digitally implies a cultural change and leads to reinvent models and techniques using digital infrastructures for new ways of teaching and learning. European higher education libraries have been involved in building an open knowledge society for centuries, and the current digital transformation is one of their main challenges. European academic libraries have shown strong leadership in advancing open scholarship and open science over the last 2 decades. But for long, higher education librarians have also been skilled trainers and pedagogues in information literacy and related topics and fields such as copyright, licensing, open publishing. Academic librarians have a strong culture of openness, and within the last decade, they clearly took advantage of the current massive digital shift for training purposes. Even if this didn't go without a lot of thinking and design, as it was the case for everyone, librarians have consistently facilitated access to knowledge and information, partnering with higher education teachers, educators, students, and researchers. They invested lately more than ever the possibilities offered by digital resources sharing infrastructures and develop OER, Open Educational Resources, and OE, Open Education, Strategic Thinking. Within this session, we shall ask ourselves how higher education institutions can take advantage from including academic and research libraries in defining policies and supporting open scholarship practices, focusing today on the library's role in supporting, creating, and disseminating open education and open educational resources, policies, and projects. I will grant this presentation on evidence-based research carried out in late 2019 and published in June of 2020. So how do higher education libraries network enhance sustainable teaching and learning by addressing OER issues in a European strategic perspective? Education is essential to advancing society, and making it open means connecting the dots between technology and affordable quality teaching and learning to make use of its greatest potential. Retain, reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute. SPARC Europe is dedicated to making open science, open scholarship, and open education the default in Europe. Here, you can see some very recent and expert publications that I invite you to discover further and read. On the left side, dedicated to scholarship and data, is the report Scoping the Open Science Infrastructure Landscape in Europe. The report dataset is also, of course, openly accessible online. On the right side, dedicated to today's focus, you can discover how SPARC Europe is supporting open teaching and learning policies and initiatives and fostering higher education libraries activities related to open education and open educational resources. Open education policy and practice has advanced for over a decade with the Cape Town Open Education Declaration, the Open Government Partnership, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and most recently, the UNESCO OER recommendation. Open education and open educational resources are strategic issues. These are fantastic opportunities for higher education, and they echo one of the library's strongest values, building an open knowledge society for centuries and opening up education and skills acquisitions towards students, researchers, and more broadly, to citizens and society. Libraries are the natural partner in such an open education effort with their strong track record in open information management, facilitation, and dissemination. First come the policies. Here is the reference to the European Commission Joint Research Centre Technical Report from 2017, Policy Approaches to Open Education, based on case studies from 28 EU member states, followed by some example of formalized policies by European higher education institutions. OER policies can be found easily, since they are gathered and shared by many, but we can underline the stunning job made by the OER World Map team that brings together policies under an OE and OER policies registry. The OER World Map project enables us to discover and contribute to mapping organizations, people, resources, policies, and projects related to open education and OER on a dynamic world map. I strongly invite you to go online, check your information. If your institution is an active stakeholder of open education or open educational resources development, flag changes, edit the records, update them. Librarians actively participate in these updates. The term open educational resources was created in 2002 at the UNESCO Forum. Following the UNESCO definition, OER are teaching, learning, and research resources that are free of cost and access barriers, and which also carry legal permission for open use. We can consider then that the foundation of open education is open educational resources. OER was more advertised in higher education after the first global conference on open education resources that took place in Paris in 2012. UNESCO issued a famous declaration then urging governments to take advantage of OER for everyone's benefit. OER include resources, tools, and practices that are free of legal, financial, and technical barriers and that can be fully used, shared, and adapted in the digital environment. Generally, this permission is granted by use of an open license, for example, Creative Commons licenses, which allows anyone to freely use, adapt, share the resource anytime, anywhere. Libraries are very aware about the Creative Commons licenses thanks to the open scholarship activities that they have been performing for long and in which they have developed a strong expertise and leadership. The Open Education and Open Educational Resources movement is supporting more affordable and effective teaching and learning in a digital world by liberating educational materials from traditional publishing models far more restrictive than an open dissemination on the internet. Our current technologies enable us to develop in many ways innovative creations and uses of educational resources with major cost savings. Education is essential to advancing society. Our educational system is built to provide every person the opportunity to build a better life by turning children into citizens, learners into teachers, employees into skilled staff. Our world craves educational opportunities. The pandemic has shown how our educational systems have been operating with a fundamental disconnect between the practices of the analog world and the vast potential of technologies. So the benefits of open education and open educational materials are clear, and they are at the heart of the higher education missions. Save costs for learners. The price of textbooks has continued to rise rapidly, Too many students do not have access to the necessary materials or use outdated books because they are too expensive, and printed editions are too often out of date by the time they reach the shelves. The rapidly rising cost of textbooks in higher education has left many students without access to the materials they need to succeed. Developing OERs means expanding access to free online quality material, affordable in print, and that they can save forever. Students learn more when they have access to quality materials. An American in-depth article focusing on empirical research relating to perceptions and efficacy at the college level was published in the journal Educational Technology Research and Development in August of 2019. This study shows that 93% of students who use OER do as well or better than those using traditional materials, since they have access, an easy access, to the content starting day one of the course. An open access version of this article is available online, as well as overview slides. A review provides a summary of empirical research on the impacts of OER adoption. Open education ensures that teachers, learners, and institutions can fully explore the technology potential, including but not restricted to real-time updates, peer-to-peer exchange between students, critical thinking practiced through discussions between learners from different cultures and backgrounds. All of this and more is possible when the pathways for technology in education are fully open. Education is the key to advancing society's greatest goal, from building a strong economy to leading healthy lives. By increasing access to education and creating a platform for more effective teaching and learning, open education benefits us all. Let's dig deeper and see how academic libraries can help a higher education institution formalize a policy in this area, build a strategy, and foster efficient and good practices. Higher education librarians in Europe gathered in a working group called the European Network of Open Education Librarians, ENOL. The network strategy is led by a vision and based on networking methods and aiming at building a strong open education strategy, relying on European higher education libraries' vision, action, resources, and education. Libraries easily built on their peers' shared and reusable experience. To inform the strategic path ahead in the open education and open educational resources area in late 2019, SPARC Europe, in consultation with ENOL, launched a one-of-a-kind research to investigate open education policy and practices within academic libraries in Europe, and the current state of the OE/OER offering in libraries in higher education in Europe with the support of research consulting and the help and guidance of many librarians that are named in the acknowledgement part of the report. The Open Education and OER in European Libraries of Higher Education report is based on evidence collected throughout Europe by means of a survey. Published on Zenodo on the 24th of June of 2020 under a Creative Commons license, both the report and the survey dataset are openly accessible, downloadable, and reusable. The report analysis provides insights into how libraries are facilitating and supporting teaching and learning in higher education through open education in today's digital world. 182 responses were received from nearly 30 countries amongst which 146 could be analyzed. Collected responses came from mostly university, followed by technical universities, specialized institutions, and universities of applied sciences. There were also 4 national libraries, 1 distant learning university, 1 teaching college, and 1 academic hospital that provided responses. The 4 most common countries were Spain, UK, Poland, and Greece. 9 countries saw responses from a single institution. All free text answers were translated into English for analysis, but they remain in their original language in the dataset deposited on Zenodo. The table of contents, reproduced here for you, displays the key areas defined in the survey. I will go through them and briefly summarize the major findings. Very few respondents reported having seed funding or granting programs to stimulate or kickstart open educational work or having dedicated OE budgets. Overall, this illustrates that the funding for OER in European libraries and higher education institutions is still limited. Fundraising or budget allocation for open education efforts is certainly to progress open education activity. The survey inquired about the size of the organization to see whether this affected OE activity. Most of the institutions had 5,000 FTE staff members or fewer. Only 17 reported having more than 20,000 students. For those offering more than 10 different types of OER-related services, there seems to be a correlation between OE and OER activities and the amount of students. Only 20% of institutions had a formal task force, committee, or entity with an open education focus. Those were more likely to have a policy on open educational resources. 27 out of 145 institutions had OER policies, and of these, 14 were part of a larger overarching policy, whilst 4 were standalone policies dedicated to open education. In most cases, the library was involved in conceptualizing OER policies, especially in the case of standalone policies. Respondents were split 50-50 on whether the library takes a lead in advancing OE or OER in their organizations. The libraries that do take a lead were more likely to be involved in policy conceptualization. On a regular basis, the bodies that libraries most often collaborate with on the advancement of OER were, of course, academic departments, information technology, faculty, e-learning or distance education, and teaching and learning centers. A positive correlation appears also between OE/OER advocacy activities and the number of students. By far, the 2 most common groups that responded informed about OER were library staff and teaching staff, and many are reporting liaison with faculty and institutional management. As regards advocacy activities in particular, those who conducted a wide range of advocacy activities were not necessarily large in FTE size, but they did have more students. The most popular ways for libraries to advocate for OE were through presentations, website events, social media channels, but also teacher training, author training, and library guides, what we call lib guides. However, there does not seem to be a correlation between the amount of ATEs and the general library service offering. The main areas where the library had a supportive role was advice on copyright and licensing, OER co-creation, and knowledge exchange, followed by technical support, training and education, scholarly communication knowledge, and storage services. As far as skills to support open education are concerned, institutions reported having higher skill levels in areas where they worked together with other departments to provide OER services. This illustrates that a collaborative cross-university approach And having a strong understanding of the interplay between professionals and stakeholders appear to facilitate skill advancement with pedagogical and educational services, including libraries. However, the vast majority of respondents also reported suffering from a lack of skills and knowledge of open education. Therefore, training opportunities could lie in areas such as knowledge on repositories and metadata, and knowledge exchange and public engagement activities. Respondents were prompted to provide 3 free text responses on their top 3 challenges in supporting open education and the top 3 opportunities or benefits for doing so. 62 respondents provided answers. From them, 5 overall themes emerged. The theme with the most challenges was culture and environment. The theme with the most opportunities was quality, access, and reuse. In terms of policy development, both institutionally and nationally, respondents report as a major challenge the lack of an organizational or national OER policy. Interestingly, respondents who consider policy development to be an opportunity already have institutional policies in place and are engaged in the development of national policies. For teaching and library staff, there were far more challenges than benefits mentioned. The 2 main challenges that respondents pointing out about people were the ability to influence teaching staff and training needs in order to develop more capacity. Respondents saw more opportunities and benefits with students and external partners as key benefactors, partners, and collaborators. About the resources, the 2 main challenges are the lack of funding surrounding OE and OER first. Of the 39 libraries who carried out the most OE/OER activities, only 7 organizations had dedicated budgets for open education. Again, a lack of relevant skills and know-how amongst staff for creating OERs and implementing technical support was indicated. Opportunities for more fundraising efforts and budget allocation for OE efforts is likely to progress open education activity. Improving skills development is the second major opportunity underlined in order to support OER's creation. The theme Culture and Environment had the highest number of instances of all the themes, which demonstrate that organizational concerns were significant for the majority of survey respondents. What opportunities? Well, first, the creation of a culture of openness, including open policies. Then, rise of the leadership. Number 3 was deepening collaboration between institutional departments and services. And finally, engaging in national policy development. What challenges? Well, the first one of the main challenges is the speed of change. And this concerns mindset as well as institutional culture, 2 aspects that can be related. And about the lack of institutional leadership in this topic, the challenges far outweighed the opportunities. There was a lack of understanding of benefits by senior management, challenges in the ability to influence teaching staff, and challenges in the understanding of interplay between professions internally. Finally, about quality, access, and reuse. Quality was communicated predominantly as an opportunity to increase the quality of education overall. The opportunities for this area outweighed these challenges, with the respondents reporting increased access, visibility, and discoverability as an opportunity to first eliminate barriers to education, then potentially increase availability of university teaching resources to directly contribute to creating a more equitable society, then improve quality of education and access to it, and even to raise their institution's profile in research-based teaching. Most of the challenges raised were related to copyright and licensing as a barrier to access and reuse, sharing good practices internationally, improving the discovery of OER, because OER being open, it is quality. So what can we do to foster the development of strong open education and open educational resources services? Well, first, maybe you take the test and take the time for reflecting on the survey's 7 key areas. The question set used in the survey is available in the report appendix. It addresses 7 key areas, including related information on the organization, funding context, open education policy, engagement with open education, advocacy services, related challenges and benefits. How could higher education institutions take advantage of the teaching and learning digital shift and follow the 2019 UNESCO OER recommendation? Well, first let's read the UNESCO recommendation and assess the scope and the challenges at stake when engaging in the open education and OER's field. Also take into account that cultural change takes time. Collaboration between experts from various fields and planning are time-consuming, but they are fundamental steps towards a fruitful collaboration between services. Open and reusable resources are here to help also. You can take inspiration from others and translate their achievements into your own digital reality as a first step before starting your own program. The UNESCO OER Dynamic Coalition launched final report, and the documents shared in Open Education Policy Registry related to the OER World Map could provide some ideas to start with and build an institutional or a national policy that will maybe lead you beyond your own expectations. How does the strategic choice to mobilize academic libraries in the area of opening up access to education can support and accelerate access to the educational resources of institutions? Higher education institution has an excellent infrastructure available with open education and open educational resources. The digital world is a fantastic opportunity for opening up teaching and learning. So certainly, higher education institutions do not want to miss it. Libraries have a deep and large, even comprehensive culture of scholarship openness. Recently, libraries are expanding their task portfolios as they become more involved in the creation and curation of OERs, such as the co-creation of open textbooks. Furthermore, they are strengthening collaborative relationships with teaching faculty. With training and upskilling in open education and OERs, more libraries could therefore consider stepping up responsibilities in these areas by following on from their leadership in open science. The study shows a general trend. Open education is often part of a larger overarching institutional policy. To further accelerate open education and OER efforts, higher education institutions could maybe consider libraries as a key partner within the institution from the strategic level, including strategies into building open virtual teaching and learning services could bring to a strong engagement in the creation and co-creation of formal open education and open educational resources policy. The question how to get started can be also answered by looking at the SPARC Europe report 10 recommendations. The following 10 recommendations for academic libraries can be drawn from the survey. Their relevance depends on where you are in the life cycle of open education offering. Explore opportunities for seed funding projects to kickstart efforts. Exploring more opportunities for seed funding, open education, and OER's creation and dissemination can help kickstart efforts within the institution and could stimulate more growth and adoption of OER. Explore establishing a granting program to create OER. Well, yes, granting programs for OER creation for teachers can also encourage more OER activity within the institution. This works for the institution, but the library as well. This is about funding. Is there an opportunity in your institution to give libraries leadership in open education? Well, many peers are, so hearts and minds have already been won with open science. Maybe that can be the case with open education. To help initiate or develop an OE policy locally or nationally is important. Policies are still thin on the ground. Libraries are a key partner for starting a formal policy project in open education and OER, and building on the policies of peers can be a strong accelerator. Invest more in understanding the interplays between professionals and stakeholders locally and externally. Can be important, for example, to develop a stakeholder management plan. This is about collaboration. Then engagement in co-creation of OER and identifying the skills needed for this. Upskilling, partnering more internally and externally is important. We have to train. Advocacy efforts has to be made towards senior management, but it pairs with training staff, pedagogical staff, library staff, technical support staff. Then you are ready to get started to create. Step up advocacy efforts toward teaching staff and management by drawing on good practices, advocacy tools, and identifying local champions is really important, and it goes with locating where and what OER are being created to make them optimally accessible and monitor growth over time. Put a library in your engine. There is a vivid networking spirit with academic and research libraries that involve welcoming users, providing spaces, giving access to both physical and digital collections, curating data, managing information retrieval, preserving cultural heritage. People are getting used to using their digital infrastructure. Higher education institutions can take advantage of the technology opportunities and the library's engagement. Openness culture, educational services, and expert training experience to look ahead and accelerate opening up access to educational resources of Europe's higher education institutions. The SPARC Europe survey, Open Education and OER in European Libraries of Higher Education, revealed that academic libraries are taking an important role in advancing open education in Europe as open information and knowledge managers, facilitators, and disseminators. Libraries provide essential support in information literacy and discovery, along with copyright and licensing. Furthermore, they could do more to support co-creation and other knowledge activities scaffolding open education with innovative work. Here, the exception rather than the rule. In order to overcome this challenge and increase awareness and advocacy of open education is necessary. The next step for developing strong OE and OER services is maybe for higher education institutions to fund these activities and invest in staff training. Collaborating with their libraries can help institutions and countries build more open, creative, legally and technically sound education environment infrastructure and facilitate access to education material for all. Thank you.